Okay, different intro today. YouTube is acting weird, so please download this video just in case they remove it.
I found something really weird while researching local cryptid sightings. I've been interested in weird and unexplainable shit for years. I've gone down a ton of different rabbit holes, and a few weeks ago, I started to get more into cryptids. Dogman sightings seem to be pretty common in my state, and after reading a bit about them, I decided that I wanted to start researching some local sightings. Things got really weird when I started using the names of towns near me in my search queries. I found a post on the North American Dogman Project message board from 2022 that described a multi-year chain of Dogman sightings in a town called Boxford. They go back so far that they've sort of been absorbed into the town's folklore. Something about the post felt really weird to me. The original post about Boxford kept getting deleted with no explanation until an admin pinned it. OP made a few more posts after this. He said that his house was being searched when he left because when he came back, his stuff was out of place. I know this sounds like typical schizo shit, but there are a few details that I can't explain. There was one time when he came home to a bunch of police cars without license plates parked in his driveway, and he got photos. His stories are pretty tough to explain away. Someone mentioned the incident on Reddit like a year after it happened, but the post was deleted. The comments and title are still there, though. What do you all make of this? Boxford is less than 10 minutes from where I live, so this one hit pretty close to home. The first post about Boxford on the NADP forums, and the earliest mention of anything going on in the area that I could find online.
I check these forums a few times a week, and today I noticed that my thread had gone missing again. This is the second time this thread has been deleted here with no explanation, and in my last post an admin confirmed that they didn't delete it. I saved the exact text of the post after it was deleted for the first time, so I've just copied and pasted it here. I've had a really hard time keeping this post online anywhere. Before I found this forum, I posted this on Reddit. My account was permanently suspended within a week for multiple repeated violations of Reddit's content policy, despite the fact that I'd never really used Reddit before, apart from a very old account I stopped using when I was around 13. I also posted the video I linked on YouTube, and it was quickly deleted. I re-uploaded it as an unlisted video, and it hasn't been taken down yet. I'm not sure why this thread keeps getting deleted, but unless an admin tells me to stop, I'll keep reposting this. I live in the Boxford Topsfield area. There have been several sightings here. They have fascinated me for years, but recently, several events happened that made these events more of an urgent matter. To start, sightings of a potential dogman in the area go back years. I first heard of them on a camp out with my Cub Scout troop. Every summer, we had a one-night camp out at a campsite in the woods behind Boy Scout Park. I was a senior Webelow at the time, so I was one of the older kids on the camp out. Everything went well until it was dark. Some of the boys decided to play a game of manhunt, which is like hide and seek. I was one of the seekers, and we found all but 3 people within 30 minutes. At this point, practically everyone was looking for the remaining players. Most games of manhunt usually go like this. Everyone but the good hiders are found quickly, and the remainder of the game is spent looking for the final players. I was searching with a group of 3 other boys. We were checking some of the more obscure trails when we heard screaming. A kid who was about a year younger than me came running out of the woods. He was in hysterics, and we took him to the counselors at the campsite. Once they calmed the kid down, he said that he saw a werewolf in the woods where he was hiding. Obviously, the counselors didn't believe him, but they sent us all to our tents. I think they were worried that the kid saw a coyote. There have been several odd events since then, and this has caused the story to move from a playground rumor to a local legend. I think it's worth mentioning that most of these sightings came from kids. Once I started 7th grade, conversation about the events died down, and I mostly forgot about them. Oddly enough, there was one kid who claimed to see the creature until 8th or 9th grade when I fell out of contact with him. He loved the outdoors and was super energetic. For a while, the creature was all he'd ever talk about. He'd go on and on about seeing it in the woods while hiking or camping. I used to think he was trying to play a trick on us, but now I'm not so sure. Recently, something happened that dragged these memories back to the forefront of my mind. My 10-year-old brother saw something around a week ago. My family and I live in a house that is right next to a large area of forest. My brother doesn't go into the woods often, but he loves to play in the yard. One evening, he came in earlier than usual. He was out of breath and seemed scared. I asked him what was wrong, and he said that he saw a monster. I assumed that he saw an animal of some sort, so I asked him how big it was. He pointed to a spot on the wall that was around 8 feet up. I asked him to describe the creature he saw. He said the creature was covered in black fur, had a tail, had a head that looked like a dog's and massive claws. He told me that he was playing on our tire swing when he started to feel uneasy for no apparent reason. He then saw this creature right on the edge of the woods surrounding our yard. It didn't chase him or anything. It just looked at him. The moment my brother saw it, he ran inside. My blood ran cold, and I told him to go talk to my mom. She thinks he saw an animal and isn't letting him play outside past 5 o'clock anymore. At this point, I was pretty scared for my brother. I spent the next day researching what he saw and came across stories about dogmen. Later that night, I was considering reaching out to ask people what they thought about whatever is going on in Boxford when I heard howling outside my window. I immediately grabbed my phone and was able to record them. I'll attach the video. You can't see anything, but you can hear the howls clearly. The part of this that is really unnerving to me is the fact that all these sightings are coming from kids. There haven't been any attacks that I know of. I was still trying to rationalize the events at this point until my brother came home from school one day, saying that his friend saw the creature too. This absolutely terrified me, and I reached out for help on Reddit. I was hoping I could get some answers on why the creature here is targeting kids, and whether it's a serious risk or not. I've read some pretty disturbing stories about dogmen, and was wondering what I should do. Here are the howls I recorded. It's been around 3 months since I wrote this.
His other posts.
I just wanted to say right off the bat that I know full well how crazy this sounds, but I think I'm under surveillance by an unknown person or persons. I hesitated a lot prior to writing this out of fear of ridicule, but I think it's important that I say this. Please just hear me out. I'm going to start from the beginning. A few months ago, my younger brother saw a dogman. Dogman encounters, specifically among children, go back years in my town. I made a post detailing not only my brother's sighting but the strange behavior patterns displayed by the dogman in my area, as shown in local stories and rumors I've heard over the years. I thought the sightings was particularly odd because the dogman occasionally followed certain individuals, sometimes for years, without harming them, and I posted both on this forum and on Reddit about what is happening in my area looking for help or advice. My Reddit account was permanently suspended within 1 day due to multiple repeated violations of Reddit's content policy, despite the fact that the account was a throwaway I made specifically for the post. The only other time I had made a Reddit account was several years prior, where I was active on various meme subreddits before losing interest in Reddit. That account has not been suspended as far as I know, but I don't remember the username and can't check. Roughly a month after I posted on this forum, my post was mysteriously deleted. It took me a few weeks to notice. When I finally did notice, I copied the exact text of my original post, which I drafted in Google Docs, and reposted it with a brief statement telling that the post disappeared for seemingly no reason. A moderator of this forum responded to the post saying that neither he or anyone else on the mod team deleted it, but it may have been deleted accidentally while clearing out spam. I believed my post was deleted accidentally during said cleanup until the following month, when the post was deleted yet again. This time I noticed rather quickly and reposted it again. I'm not going to paste the text here, but I just checked my pinned repost, and it is still up as of June 14th, 2022, at roughly 1 p.m. EST. In response, it was pinned by a moderator who told me to check my device for malware. I downloaded a software called Malwarebytes and scanned my MacBook Air, which is my primary device. The application reported that it found a keylogger, which logs everything you type and click among other vague malware. The software ended up quarantining 13 files, each under 2 kilobytes in size, and allowed me to delete them. I deleted them from my device but wish I kept them for analysis. I subsequently scanned my old Mac, iPad, and iPhone and found similar malware which I deleted. The only thing that those devices had in common was that I had done or searched something Dogmen related to them at some point. According to the file's metadata, the viruses had been on my devices for only a few months, even though I hadn't used some of them for several years. I replied to the moderator's response to my post about what I had found on my devices, and he directed me to a tech support website. I didn't end up using the service he recommended, but brought all of my devices to a local tech specialist who is a close family friend. He inspected each of the devices and found more spyware on them, even the ones I had scanned. In total, there were 98 malicious files on my new Mac, 53 on my iPhone, 30 on my iPad, and 27 on my old Mac that Malwarebytes had missed. He analyzed the files and disturbingly concluded that each of them were installed via an external drive called No Name, which is the factory default name given to most SD cards, external drives, and USB drives. This means that someone was able to access my devices which I store in my home and manually plug something into each of them. The tech specialist told me that he wasn't 100% sure if he was able to find everything and that I should probably start fresh by buying a new device. I ended up buying a new iPhone as my old one. An iPhone 6 was due for replacement anyway. I've kept the new phone close, and so far nothing had been found via Malwarebytes. I don't think someone would have been able to install something onto my new iPhone via USB because I haven't let it out of my sight since I bought it. I even sleep with it in my pocket. In the weeks following the purchase of my new iPhone, I've started noticing small objects in my house moving around when I'm away at work or school. It isn't anything major. It's not like my room looks as if it had been ransacked, but there are still small things being moved around. The most prominent example of this is what happened with my desk drawer. My desk drawer is slightly crooked and doesn't shut completely unless you push it a certain way. I almost never shut it all the way because I don't really need to. I left for work one day and came back to the drawer being completely shut. I would have assumed that I just shut it properly that morning and forgotten about it, but I know for a fact that I left it slightly ajar. I know that I grabbed a pencil from the drawer that morning to write a shopping list, and I distinctly remember the corner of the drawer colliding with the frame. For some reason that morning, I decided that I wanted to shut the door completely. One of my hands was occupied, and I gave a half-hearted attempt to shut the drawer, which I know for a fact that failed. I tried for a few seconds before deciding that it wasn't worth the effort and leaving for work. When I returned, the contents of my desk were in order, but the drawer was fully closed. This really freaked me out, and the next morning I pulled a few loose strands from my hair and shut them in each entrance to my house. When I returned from work, all of the hairs were still in place. I calmed down slightly until I realized that I had forgotten the windows. I tried the same thing the next morning with the doors, along with every window on the first floor of my house. When I returned, I found that the hair in my laundry room window, which is near the back of my house, was gone. I tried opening the window from the outside, and lo and behold, I was able to open it. This is really odd because I never opened that window. I went inside to inspect the lock, and I found that the latch that unlocks and locks the windows had been tampered with. The latch on my window attaches to the rest of the mechanism via a square peg and hole. The latch has a socket that fits over the square peg, and it is permanently attached via glue. I found that I was to turn the latch really easily. I then noticed that there was a flat plastic cap that matched the color of the latch attached to the top. I pulled it off to reveal a screw, which I removed. I then removed the latch itself and saw that while the latch said the window was locked, the peg below, which controls the actual locking mechanism, had been turned to the unlocked position. Moreover, the square peg had been sanded down to a circle. This rendered the latch useless. The screw, which was somewhat loose, still allowed the latch to turn while fastening it to the rest of the mechanism. The plastic cap covered and hid the top of the screw. One really strange detail of this is the fact that opening the window triggered my alarm. My alarm uses magnetic sensors on my windows and doors. If they are moved too far from each other while the alarm is armed, it will set the alarm off. I triggered the alarm when I opened the window, but the fact that the hair was gone confirmed that the window had been opened at another point that day. The alarm obviously wasn't set off, and I have no idea how someone could have bypassed it. I'm not one to immediately jump to the conclusion that the FBI is spying on me, but I do think I am being watched or routinely having my house searched because of what I posted. I understand that most of these pieces of evidence I presented could easily be explained away. The one thing that confirmed this for me was my window being tampered with. I have replaced the window, but I don't think stopping whoever is breaking in is as easy as that. Whoever this person is, they have access to malware that cannot be detected by standard antivirus programs, have a lot of time on their hands, and have the ability to custom make a plastic cap that perfectly fits my window latch, which probably means that this person or persons has some funding. I know it was custom made because my laundry room is pretty old. The window has not been replaced since the 1970s, and although the plastic of the latch was white, it had yellowed slightly with age. The plastic cap that hid the screw had that same aged look, but the way the plastic felt in my hands in comparison to the original latch told me that it was artificially done. I have absolutely no idea who is doing this, and it's really beginning to scare me. Please give me help and/or advice because I don't know what to do. The only thing I can think of is to make this post. Someone out there doesn't want this information out there, so I'm going to do everything I can to make this known. I've been interested in Dogman for years, and I've never noticed this before I made the post telling about what's going on in my town, which I find quite odd. I've avoided using the exact name of the town in this post because I think it may be one of a list of keywords that cause my post to be deleted. The town is in eastern Massachusetts, and you can see the name in my pinned post. Whatever is going on between Dogmen and the local kids, me posting about it seems to have struck a nerve. I'll make additional posts if the situation develops. Just over a month ago, I made a post talking about how I was being monitored because of my research. Quite a few things have happened since then, and I finally have time to write more about what happened. I'll pick up where I left off. After I made my initial post, I started to get extremely paranoid. I didn't feel safe in my own home anymore, which is a truly terrible feeling. Over the next 2 weeks, I fell into a nervous spiral. I'd get extremely nervous when something wasn't in the exact place I thought I left it, because I had no idea whether the object moving had something to do with what is happening to me or not. I made sure to pay close attention to the new window I installed, and as far as I know, it hasn't been tampered with. For the next week or so, I continued to notice small changes in the way my house is organized. The things I noticed then were different from what I noticed prior to making the post. Originally, it looked as if someone had searched my house and hastily put everything back, but that quickly shifted to weird, almost nonsensical changes. For example, I have 3 decorative portraits of fruit in my kitchen. They've been up for as long as I've been living in the house, and on multiple occasions when I came back from work, they were in a different order. I'd always put them back to normal, and a few days later they'd move again. To make matters worse, I had no idea how whoever was surveilling me was getting into my house. I continued to do the hair in the door thing I explained in my previous post all throughout the week, and I never saw them out of place. Of course, I began to assume that whoever was monitoring me caught on and started replacing the hair. This made me incredibly nervous because I'd been routinely checking all my doors and windows for signs of modification, but I never found anything. I knew that I'd be pretty much screwed if any more of my door or window locks were disabled, because I don't currently have the money to replace them with something more durable. The stress of these 2 situations made me so paranoid that it became hard for me to think straight. Now that I'm in a better position to think, I've developed a theory as to why the changes made to my house are so weird and nonsensical. Before I made my initial post about being monitored, when the situation was just starting, my house was being entered and searched exclusively to find information and monitor me. When I made my post about what was happening to me, I think whoever was monitoring me saw the post too. I'm not particularly surprised by this because I have reason to believe that the person and people behind the break-ins frequent this forum. Posts about my brother seeing a dogman mysteriously vanish over several months. Once whoever is behind the break-ins knew that I was aware of them, they shifted their objective from monitoring to intimidation. I almost feel like the whole situation is just one big veiled threat at this point. I know that someone is coming into my house and searching it, and whoever it is wants to make it known that they're more powerful than me and I can't do anything to stop them. To do this, they constantly remind me that they are present by moving various objects around the house. I have no doubt that I'm still being closely monitored, but I now think that whoever is doing this is trying to scare me as much as possible. This confuses me because I have no idea what they're trying to intimidate me into. I think it's most likely that they want me to stop posting about what happened to my brother and how I'm being monitored, so I'm openly defying them and doing it anyway. Anyway, a few more days passed without much happening until I came home from work one day and saw that both of the bookshelves in my bedroom had been toppled. All of my stuff was absolutely everywhere, and pretty much everything in the bookshelves' path, including my bed, were destroyed. This drove me to my breaking point, and for lack of a better term, I completely lost it. I don't really remember the fine details of what happened that night, but I know that I got my camping supplies from the basement and drove out to the Golden Road in northern Maine. I didn't bring any phones or devices because I was worried that they could be used to track me. The Golden Road is a very long logging road, and I remember going on a canoeing trip with my summer camp there several years ago. Perhaps that's why I chose to go there. I wasn't right in the head that night, and decided to drive out to the most remote place I knew of. Looking back, I have no clue what my plan was that night apart from get the hell away from the house. The drive was about 5 hours long, and I reached the Golden Road at around 11 p.m. From there, I drove until I reached a bridge. I'm not entirely sure which bridge it was, but I pulled over, got my backpack from the trunk, and went out into the woods off to the side of the bridge, completely abandoning my car in the process. Obviously, I don't last long out there with my crazed state of mind and lack of a trail. I wandered aimlessly for a few hours. It was pretty much pitch black, and I didn't want to use my flashlight because I was worried that it would make me more visible. I tripped constantly and got pretty banged up in the process. I eventually collapsed on the side of a river at what I think was around 4 a.m. because I remember that the sun was just beginning to come up. Thank God a forest ranger found me. I ended up having to be hospitalized for 3 days, and during that time, I talked to a ton of people, family included, who helped calm me down. I tried to avoid talking about dogmen so that I didn't seem even more crazy, but I definitely babbled about the government shortly after I came to. I have a long history of panic attacks, so that definitely helped the situation seem more normal to my family. Both the doctors and my family now think that I had a really bad panic attack because I didn't have enough money to pay my taxes and was worried that the government would come and arrest me. That's obviously not accurate, but I'm not correcting them. I've read a few things on this forum along with some other sites about theories about some sort of government branch that deals with dogmen. Does anyone know where I can find more information about this and/or information about how the government deals with civilians who have somehow stumbled upon secret projects and information? That would be really helpful to me. Any advice or your thoughts on the situation would be greatly appreciated.
Good shit. There seems to be some sort of agency trailing these dogman encounters. Very common to find police show up after a notable dogman encounter. I wouldn't be surprised if there are multiple factions involved in that anon story. If it was me, I'd have left the window alone and either set up a camera or parked my car at work and camped out waiting for that motherfucker to come visit. He lost all leverage when he started doing things that notified the people breaking in that he knew. One story I heard, this guy said he had a dogman encounter and then started talking about it, and a few days later he is visited by some unknown government officials inquiring into what he saw. He said these guys showed up with some kind of infrasound equipment that emits a frequency that paralyzes animals, and when he told them what he saw, they got very uncomfortable and told him to stop talking about it. Whoever these guys were, they had equipment ready to deal with these dogmen.
I know it's been a pretty long time since my last update, but I have a lot to say. This is going to require some context, but I'll try to keep it brief. A few years ago, there was a very small earthquake in Boxford and the surrounding area. It was so small that no one really noticed it until it was on the news a day later. I only know about it because while it wasn't really perceptible to humans, it was enough to cause minor damage to my house. There's a small piece of polished stone on the threshold of the door from my garage door to my house, and after the earthquake, I noticed that it had cracked down the middle. It still fits snugly in the threshold, but if you step on the edge, half of it comes off. It's pretty hard to put back in. You have to lift up both halves in a weird way to put the second half back. I've gotten used to stepping over it, but occasionally someone will accidentally step on it. When I came back from work just over a month ago, the stone on the threshold was out of place. It wasn't detached, but it looked as if someone had knocked it out of place and replaced it without knowing exactly how. This was extremely odd because the garage door was closed and locked. I didn't really think much of it and assumed I stepped on it on the way out. After a few hours, I had to go down to my basement to get something. At the bottom of the stairs, I found the safe I keep things like my passport in. Someone had ripped it out of the wall and tried to smash it open with a brick. The brick was laying on one of the steps and the safe was on the basement floor. I took photos of both of them, which I will attach to this post. I think it's worth saying that although the safe belongs to me, I have no clue where the brick came from. Just over a week later, I got pretty sick at work and came home early to tons of police cars and an ambulance parked outside of my house. Each and every one of the police cars said that they were with the Boxford Police Department, but none of them had license plates or even plate mounts. I thought that this had something to do with the fact that these were police cars, but I did some research later, and am pretty sure that police cars need license plates just as much as any other car. The moment I pulled up to the driveway, more than 10 guys in police uniforms ran out of my house and got into their vehicles. They were all armed. All of them were carrying massive guns. I don't really know much about guns, so I have no idea what kind they were. All I really know for sure was that they weren't handguns because they took 2 hands to carry. They looked automatic, but again, I'm not 100% sure. Some of the guys were wearing heavy-looking black vests. I'm pretty sure the guys left because I showed up. By the time I was in the driveway, the ambulance and most of the police cars were gone. A group of 2 people and 1 car stayed behind. One guy, still holding a gun, walked up to my car and asked me to roll down my window. I obliged and asked him why the hell he was at my house. He said something about a gas leak. The only reason I'm not being more specific is because that's pretty much all he said. The whole exchange was extremely rushed and not at all police-like. All he really said was that he was there to check out a dangerous natural gas leak. I barely had time to get a word out before he walked away, got into his car and drove off with his partner. I didn't really get a good look at the second guy, but remember exactly what the guy who walked up to my car looked like. He was white, looked between 40 and 50 years old, had a very short gray beard, sideburns, and relatively small brown eyes. His hair was a sort of grayish black and wasn't all that long. The police uniform he was wearing was slightly too small for him. I was able to get a photo of his car, and the lack of a license plate, by zooming in on it with my iPhone camera from the bottom of my driveway. Sorry about the incredibly poor quality. I wish I got more photos of the people and vehicles, but again, I was incredibly nervous and didn't want to get myself in more trouble than I thought I was already in. This was sort of the last straw for me, and I spent the next few weeks looking for a rental property to move into for the foreseeable future. During that time, I saw an ambulance drive up and down my street several times. I'm reasonably sure that this ambulance was the same one I saw before because it didn't have a license plate. I've pretty much ruled out the idea that someone on my street got hurt because I live on a dead-end street. There are less than 8 houses on it and everyone knows each other, so if someone got seriously hurt, I would have heard about it. The ambulance couldn't have been on the way to an emergency because, like I said, my street is a dead end. I don't want to sound crazy, but I don't think that thing was a real ambulance. I'm now living in a rental property a fair distance from Boxford, but I'm still close enough to travel between where I'm living and Boxford. I don't want to say the exact name of the town I'm in for obvious reasons. I have a sort of half-baked theory about the whole police incident. This is pure speculation, and I want to make it clear that I don't fully believe or disbelieve it. It's just what makes the most sense to me with the evidence and experiences I've had as of now. My brother is a part of the Cub Scouts, and I usually drive him to the pack meetings. The reason I'm bringing this up is because the Boxford Police Department sometimes shows up to talk about safety. They're all really nice people, and I know a lot of the members from the scout meetings. I didn't recognize a single person in my driveway. I know I can't be sure because I was far away from most of them, but none of them were even remotely similar. I think that this is direct proof of two things: that these people weren't part of the Boxford Police Department, and that whoever is breaking into / damaging and searching my house has way more than one person. This means that those vehicles I saw weren't actually real police cars and ambulances. Law enforcement and EMTs are a pretty good thing to disguise as if you want to surveil someone without their knowledge. They can go a lot of places without being asked questions, won't look suspicious carrying certain equipment, and almost always get the right of way. I think the ambulance is actually some kind of surveillance vehicle. I only think this because it drove by my house several times and is large enough to carry a ton of specialized equipment. If this is true, then the organization behind this has one hell of a budget. They have enough funding to get at least 5 police cars and an ambulance, have them customized to look like Boxford police vehicles, and afford all that equipment they were carrying, and that's just what I saw. God knows what was in that ambulance. The only contradiction in my theory is that if this organization is so specialized, why did they try to break into my safe with a brick? Shouldn't they have something better than a brick? This is somewhat far-fetched, but I think the thing with the safe was only really meant to intimidate me, sort of like the reasonless switching of the paintings on my wall that I mentioned in a previous post. What could they want with my passport? To steal my identity? I doubt it. I don't think I was supposed to see those vehicles, though. I left work pretty unexpectedly because I got a pretty severe stomach bug, and when I showed up in my driveway, everyone got out of there pretty fast. The excuse that I was given seemed extremely rushed, which leads me to believe that my early arrival wasn't expected. I don't really leave work early often because I need money. The last time was back in 2020 when I started to experience minor COVID-like symptoms. I actually think theory is pretty probable, because that encounter I had at my house was beyond suspicious. That definitely wasn't the police. Now I'm assuming that the reason this is all happening to me is that I wrote in great detail about the Dogman situation in Boxford, and how it seems to be exclusively targeting kids and teens, along with the fact that it goes back years. Whoever is doing all of this to me really didn't want this information available to the public. I'm not sure what they were thinking, given the fact that this is affecting multiple people in multiple close-knit towns. Something like this would be pretty hard to hide, and I'm willing to bet that they were banking on the fact that no one would take a kid who claimed to have seen a werewolf seriously. I brought the information to a group that takes that kind of stuff very seriously, and now the situation is officially on someone else's radar. I don't think this hypothetical organization is doing. This is trying to stop whatever is going on. If anything, activity has actually accelerated in the past few years. I don't know if I've mentioned this elsewhere, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but according to my brother, there are a ton of other boys around town that have seen the Dogman too. Anyway, I feel like this organization doesn't want people knowing much about what's going on. In response to this, I've doubled down on my research looking for anything weird in my town's history. I have no idea whether I'm putting myself in danger or not by directly defying these people, but I don't really care about my safety anymore. I'm not going to take this lightly. My brother, along with every other kid in the area, might be in serious danger. I went to the Boxford Historical Documents Center and managed to come up with a few things. This is all pretty out there, but I'm not going to discount anything. Apparently, there was a convicted witch in my area a few hundred years ago. According to the story, she was bewitched by the devil, or some other entity depending on the version of the story. inside the hollow of a tree in a place that's now called Witch Hollow Farm. That isn't particularly odd in and of itself. Ghost stories are pretty common in New England, but there are a few details about what happened that stand out to me. The first of which is that in some versions of the Witch Hollow story, the thing that apparently manifested before the convicted witch inside the tree was a wolf, or in some cases, a mix of man and beast. It's not very specific and could mean anything, but there is a very slim chance that the story might be referring to a dogman. I'm not so sure about the supposed dogman bewitching her, but it at least suggests that this woman saw a dogman. I know that in a lot of modern sightings, people report a feeling of sourceless dread when they're near a dogman. Perhaps this woman felt that same feeling and interpreted it as some sort of curse. The second thing that stood out to me about the Witch Hollow case is that the woman claimed to have been baptized by the devil at a place called 5 Mile Pond. Most, if not all, of these witch stories end with the witch being executed in or near Boxford. A ton of local stories about witches, along with a ton of original documents from when the supposed witches were still alive, mention that place. There isn't a 5 Mile Pond anywhere near me, and it took me a while to find the place the stories were talking about. It's in Boxford, right next to the elementary school. Spofford Pond used to be called 5 Mile Pond. This probably has nothing to do with dogmen, but I'm going to mention anything and everything that has potential ties to what's going on in Boxford. Boxford's history of violence doesn't end with the witch trials. I did some digging and found that there have been a ton of murders in Boxford. Like a ton. They're recent too. Some are so recent that the Document Center won't show documents surrounding them to the public out of respect for the victims' families. These murders were all extremely violent. There was apparently a human sacrifice done by some sort of cult less than 30 years ago. I can't really find any information on it apart from the fact that the leader of said cult took his own life in prison. But it definitely happened. Boxford has had a long history of terrible things. I'm not about to say something like Boxford is cursed or dogmen manifest from negative energy, but I think there might be some useful information in these old stories. Might. As for direct mentions of dogmen in the area, I turn my research to the Native American tribes that used to occupy the area. I can't find any information about them at all. It's weird. This is a shame because I really thought I'd find a lead with them. I have been living away from Boxford for about a week and plan to go back soon. I'm still in the process of researching Boxford's history. If I find anything mentioning dogmen or even cryptids in general, I'll post it here. If you think I'm going in the wrong direction by researching the local folklore, please tell me. I am well aware that this all probably has nothing to do with dogmen, but it never hurts to be sure. We're investigators. Investigators shouldn't leave any stone unturned. I couldn't figure out how to put images directly in my post, so I've uploaded them to my Google Drive.
Links removed by admin.
I actually don't think I should be the authority on what to look for, but all I remember is seeing this photo in some relatively big publication doing a piece on Dogman, and it showed this thing way up in a tall-ass tree. Almost like, how the fuck is it standing up on just leaves high? And was sent in from some hikers who noticed it after the fact. Obviously could be doctored, but the backstory of it seemed pretty credible to me. These cryptids, Bigfoot included, seem to like to chase, travel, intimidate by means of running on the top of trees where people aren't looking. It's almost as though they like to fuck with people, because we always hear the trees are crashing down behind them. Maybe in reality we only hear about the survivors because the weird government agency that handles this stuff doesn't tell us about the killings. For example, that super credible interview of the sheriff whom in his late 20s or early 30s hunting was attacked with a friend by multiple dogmen in land between the lakes. They barely made it out alive, but apparently some other sketchy murder of a camper happened at the same time, and he strongly suspects it was the dogman chasing him. He says even in the 80s, there were National Guard-like police in unmarked black vehicles around handling this supposed murder the day he was getting back from his attack. Something like that. The timeline very closely matched up with someone telling him and hunting buddy to be safe because he was being stalked, ended up shredded to pieces in his tent. I know I'm all over the place here, but what I'm trying to say is I think we only hear the survivor stories, And in these stories, they always give pursuit seemingly from atop the trees. Maybe that's why such fast animals are actually brought down to human speed. They're literally jumping from tree to tree to avoid being out in the open and vulnerable. And the effort it takes drastically reduces their land speed.
People don't look up in the woods. I learned that when I went hunting for the first time. There was a hunter in a tree stand that spooked us, and he was laughing, and I thought, I need to look up more.
There is also another detailed report from Reddit from a different year from the same area. That dude also had his account nuked. The dude mostly described what he saw and took pics for evidence, but those did not make it into the archive. However, I'll still link the Wayback Machine page if you want to check it out.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.